tank fly, boss walk, jam, nitty gritty. You're listening to the boy from the big bad city. This is Jam Hot. This is Jam Hot.
Hello folks, and welcome to the Bute Cross edition of the Cross Report. I've got to apologise for how long it has taken me to put it all together, but I was in Portugal, not really giving a crap about you folks for a while, so I hope you'll forgive me. Bute cyclocross race is probably the most grassiest, rootiest of Scotland's grassroots cyclocross scene, and with that comes a certain charm that gives the race its own unique character. You'd be forgiven for thinking that Rothsay is pretty hard to get to, but from the central belt of Scotland it's actually very easy. You just need to get yourself to Weems Bay by either car or train and then jump on the next ferry with your bike. It costs about $7.50 return if I remember correctly. I'm starting to realise that I have a season ahead of these reports describing how Davy Lines pumped everyone else in the race with ease, so I'm going to play with the format a bit today to try to keep it interesting. But before I do, how about some of you hunters come out and give this lad a race? You know who you are. Pap. Sorry for the spoiler, but as I mentioned, Davy Lines of Velossure Starley Primal won the race, and last year's winner Stevie Jackson of the mighty Glasgow United had to settle for second this time around, followed up by James Fraser Moody of Pedal Power in third. James's wife, Ruth Fraser Moody, also of Pedal Power, made a welcome return to cyclocross after some time out of the sport and dominated the women's race. Second woman was Elizabeth Clayton of Stirling Bike Club, followed up by the ever-popular Lindsay Carson in third. At the start of the race, Stevie Jackson made his trademark fast start. It's a tactic that doesn't seem to pay off for him, but he seems to be happy with it. As you can see in this video from Davy's camera, Lines simply followed for a while waiting for the right time to pounce. That point was a slightly draggy, slightly uphill patch of grass at the back of the course, after all of the hard bits. The only competitors to really see Davy after that were the numerous riders he lapped on course to victory. So this is where I'm going to take the opportunity to mess with the format a little. Jim Cameron's brother Rory took a hatful of photos of the race, and so I thought I'd just talk through a few observations. First, let's look at the photo of Davy crossing the line to win. Behind him you can see John McComsky and Lindsay McGarvey aren't so far behind, and they're trying really hard to beat one another. In fact, Davy overtook this pair a few hundred metres back, and this moment catches them dueling it out against one another. Before this, they were trying to get back in front of Davy so they could continue their battle in another lap. Okay, now look at the background of this photo from Beveridge Park a few weeks before. Some of those riders behind Davy are on the same lap. They eased up ages before this, and the commentator was explaining to the onlookers what was happening. If one of these riders had decided to attempt to ward Davy off for as far as the finish line, they could have soft-pedalled the remainder of the lap and secured a spot above the other riders around them here. Shame on you guys, and well done John and Lindsay. Alright, bear with me here, this bit might get quite pretentious, but I hope at least some of you will find it interesting. On the course there was a large set of concrete steps with the course running off to the left at a 90-degree angle. It was a perfect spot to see the limitations of what is called the suitcase lift. When lifting the bike by the top tube, it is quite often a good idea to avoid the suitcase lift. This part of the course was one of those instances. The suitcase lift is characterised by having the elbow of the lifting arm on the opposite side of the saddle from you. It basically looks like you're carrying a suitcase. Sometimes the saddle rides underneath the armpit. There were 4 reasons I know of why it was a good idea to avoid the suitcase lift at these steps. Firstly, the steps were big. This meant you needed to get the bike high in order to keep the bottom of your wheels clear of them. It's harder to get your bike high when you're doing the suitcase lift. You also didn't want to have the bike underneath you if you were going to clip those steps. You would basically fall on top of it, and that's going to hurt a bit. In addition to this, when you reached the top of the steps, you wanted the bike to be facing the way you were going to be riding, and this was at a practical 90-degree angle to the left, so you could just jump back on the bike and go. It's a lot easier to get the bike facing off to the left of the direction you're running when it isn't underneath your armpit. Lastly, it's a lot easier to get back on your bike smoothly when you can set it down a little away from you. Here is our winner Davy Lines executing beautiful technique. It's tempted to think that all of the faster riders have the best technique and the slower riders don't, but that's not quite true. Good technique is free speed, so throughout the field you'll see some riders with varying technique. Slower riders often need that free speed more. It's also great fun to nail these things in a race. The key to getting your elbow on the inside of the saddle when you lift it rather than the outside is firstly to have a light bike. It's harder on the forearm to execute a lift in this manner, so a heavy bike will hurt and you're more likely to begin favouring the suitcase instead. Next, think about the position of your palm and wrist when you grab the top tube. If your wrist is centred over the top tube with your thumb at the side of it, then you're about to execute the suitcase lift. Instead, try to rest your palm flat on the top tube with your wrist and hand at a right angle to one another and your thumb underneath the tube rather than at the side. Think about it like you're revving a motorbike. You will then find it practically impossible to lift the bike and end up with the saddle underneath your armpit. Okay, sorry if that bit was a load of rubbish. I'm only passing on what I learned from the book Skills, Drills and Bellyaches. I recommend you buy it. I just wish I could remember what I did with my copy. Thanks again for listening. The next races are at Afford and Ballock Castle. Hopefully this will be out before they actually happen.